It's the Michigan Football Report from Chat Sports. Coming up on today's show, we're going to take your questions, mostly YouTube, but mix in a Facebook, Twitter, Rumble comment or two in there throughout the show. In today's show, we're going to talk about the rumors of more night games. If you didn't see, Michigan announced the game times of a few games, including one night game. A lot of speculation there will be another. Michigan, Ohio State, right? Michigan owns Ohio State, right? They're kids who are in their fourth year of life, right? Born December 2019, 2020, 2021. Now 2022, they've never even seen Ohio State beat Michigan. But somehow Ohio State's 14.5-point favorites over the Wolverines. Those lines just released. We'll talk that and lines for 5 more Michigan games. And, hey, I'm on Twitter, at James Yoder. So go over there and give me a follow. I'm going to follow back the next 10 people who give me a follow after this show. One quick shout out, though, my guy, Luis Pop, PAPP. He is on Twitter at Malachi_13. That's MALACHI_13. I'll put his link down in the comments to his Twitter account. Missed him on the squad shout out, and he was a 54 commenter. So he's got 2 shutouts. So give him a little special recognition here to start off today's show. All right, before we jump in, reminder, the Michigan Football Report, in addition to YouTube, we're also on Rumble. Go over to Rumble. I am raw and uncensored on Rumble. I might be taking my clothes off. I might be dropping F-bombs. You never know what's going to happen on Rumble. There is no big tech overlords stomping me out over on Rumble. It's rumble.com/Michigan TV. Go over there, create an account, give the Michigan Football Report a follow. All right, first question coming in from the Michigan Football Report Facebook page. Go check us out. Nick Koyman says, are you going to any Michigan home games this year? If so, where are we slamming beers? Look, 2021 was the first season since I believe 1993 that I did not go to a Michigan football game by choice, right? 2020, clearly I didn't because I wasn't going to go on the road for any of the games, and then they didn't let fans at the home game. So I'll tell you this, all right? I'm going to look over my shoulders, make sure nobody hears, all right? It's kind of like when you're telling a dirty joke. I didn't really miss it, okay? I really, kind of looking back, I probably should have gone to the Ohio State game, gave the tickets to my nephew, a friend of his, my sister, family members, but I made up for it with my trip down to Vegas. What was that about Ohio State fans? Yeah. You know, we're not gonna mention that one on the show. So I might be into a game this year. We'll see. I'm looking at that September 10th game, night game versus Hawaii. We're gonna talk about those schedules here in a second. But I'll tell you, I didn't really miss it. But hear from you guys. And Nick, if I go to a game, you're my guy. We'll meet up. We'll be chugging beers like you can't believe. If it's an 8:00 game, it's gonna be from 7 a.m. to 7:45 p.m. We'll go to the stadium. It'll be rowdy. But I'd ask you guys here, go down in the comments. Let me know where your preferred place to watch a Michigan football game or hell, any sporting event if you want to just give context for that. So go down in the comments. I'll make this the pinned comment on today's video. If you get hit with a YouTube ad break, scroll down, give me an H if you prefer to watch at home, an S if you love going to the stadium, or you want to get rowdy, go to a bar, H, S, or B. All right, got back-to-back questions here. They're kind of on the same subject from Iceman Comp 25 on the YouTube channel. Put out a mailbag call a couple of days ago. I guess it was actually Tuesday morning. Do you think the Penn State game will be a night game this year at the Big House? Also had a good question on schedule, so let's kind of back these up together. Iceman says, is there any chance for any 3:30 p.m. start times this year? And, you know, there's probably a reason why he's asking, because if you missed it late last week, Michigan, right before the holiday weekend, Michigan announced a handful of start times for, kickoff times for games this year. So I want to walk you through the schedule if you missed it, and then speculate on the questions that Iceman had talked about there. So start off the year, that Colorado State game, the opener, is a noon game on ABC, likely be a nationally televised game. Next week after that, 8 o'clock start, Big Ten Network, that's their Michigan night game this year, right? It kind of seems going forward Michigan's going to have one night game on Big Ten Network, one game on either Fox or ABC as a night game. So that's where some of the speculation comes in. UConn's noon game the week afterwards, and then the homecoming game against Maryland on the 24th of September is also a noon game, of course, on Fox because of homecoming. Now, Michigan's going to go head on the road on October 1st at Iowa. I speculate that will be a night game. Michigan beat the Hawkeyes 42-3 in the Big Ten championship game. So you think, well, Michigan should win regardless, but go back over the years, including Jim Harbaugh in 2016, of all the times Michigan's gone into Kinnick, on it for a night game and come out losers even when they went in as double-digit favorites. So that is a potential trap game for the defending Big Ten West champion. Iowa Hawkeyes potentially beating Michigan. Indiana on the road for a noon game. Then Penn State bye week, Michigan State home by home to end out the month of October. Those are the two that look most likely. Depending on which one's having a better season, they'll probably try and speculate, wait to the last minute. If Penn State Michigan's the more impactful game, boom, that's a night game at the Big House. If not, they'll probably by default have to go to the 29th against Michigan State. But there is precedent. In 2020, the COVID season, Michigan did host for the first time ever. And the Big Ten allowed November night games, which prior to the 2019 season they had never done. You could only have night games in October and September. So November 12th against Nebraska, that is one that is now legal, allowed to be a night game. Maybe. I don't, depending on how the weather is, typically November in Michigan, November 12th, that's probably going to be a little too cold, won't be as enjoyable. But if Nebraska has a good season, was like Scott Frott's like 8th season, he's like won 40% of his games. So if they turn around in year 9, which I think I'm exaggerating by a few seasons, then potentially Nebraska could be a night game. Illinois, and as always, except for the 2006 season, Michigan and Ohio State is a noon game. Again, it will be on Fox, so expect Joel Klatt and Gus Johnson to be on that call. And then book your plane tickets now, book your hotel rooms, December 3rd, Big Ten Championship game in Indianapolis. So walk through those games, gave you the 3 that are most likely. Answer this question for me. P, M, or N, which one of those, let's just not speculate which we think it will be. Which one do you want it to be? All right. So I'm going to go with M. I think Michigan State, give, the little crowd, a little boozed up, having a little fun. I think that puts Michigan in a better position to win the game, and coming off 2 straight losses to Michigan State in 2020, and then, of course, on the road in 2021. I think that's one Michigan desperately needs to win. So I'm going to go and type my M down in the comments. Let me know P, M, or N. We mentioned at the top of the show, the Michigan Football Report is on Rumble. I'm doing some crazy stuff over there. And if you don't see any of that crazy stuff right away, keep subscribing to Rumble. Keep watching our videos over there. In addition to YouTube, we're going to put some exclusive stuff on Rumble throughout this year, maybe into the football season. It's rumble.com/Michigan TV. Link down in the comments. One addition of Rumble. Sometimes you guys are one, benefit of Rumble that I don't think they get enough credit for is you guys say sometimes, James, put this on podcast so I can listen to it all the time. I don't always have time to watch the video. I don't want to always take it on my phone, etc. Rumble allows you to do that. Download the Rumble app, iPhone, Android. You can launch the show, minimize it, go do something else, and you can listen to the audio in the background. If you want to see something, then boom, pop it right back on. Rumble.com/Michigan TV. Get the Rumble app and watch our show. Dougie Fresh, mixing it up because most of the questions were actually on schedule and night games, but I'd like this question from Dougie. He says, do you think Andrel Anthony deserves that number 1 jersey that he wore as a true freshman? And really, did anyone even know he was wearing the number 1 until he went 93 yards against Michigan State on the first drive of the game, I believe it was. And you're like, who the hell is that Andrel Anthony, that 3-star that nobody really cared about? Well, look, 12 catches in the year for Andrel last year, 248 yards, 3 touchdowns, one of them being in the college football playoff, toss from J.J. McCarthy when Michigan was down like 31-3 at that time. I don't put as much stock in the number 1 jersey as people used to. I used to remember back in 2003 and 2004. Braylon Edwards, he was number 80 as a sophomore. Juan number 1. Lloyd Carr says you got to earn it, right? And then it became maybe a recruiting tool for Rich Rod, etc. I just say give it to one receiver. Always have a number 1 in the field. I think it's lost some of that luster of David Terrell, Braylon Edwards, Anthony Carter, and enough non-special wide receivers have wore it over the year. But for 2022, Andrel is my number 1. Maybe not number 1 wide receiver. Ronnie Bell coming back. Expect him to lead this team in receptions. But if you look at the highest ceiling of all the wide receivers, at least the one we've seen in the field, not going to speculate on the freshman just yet, I think Andrel Anthony has the highest ceiling to be a top, all Big Ten player, potential, All-American, etc., and get drafted. Well, I'm not necessarily sure if Ronnie Bell is a, player who's going to get drafted, at least not in the first few rounds after this season. Alex Beek says, what do you think about Michigan being a 13.5-point underdog right now to OSU? Well, I think it's preposterous. Ohio State's running an offense that is frankly outdated, right? The 5 wide receivers and throw the ball 60 times, that's an outdated offense at this point. Michigan, with the ground rate offense last year, That seems a little bit more new age offense for me. And so I think Michigan figured out the Ohio State offense last year. They brought in a new DC who was from that same Ravens school of defense like Mike McDonald, and I don't think Michigan's going to have any problem shutting down Coleridge Stroud, who was seen this week wearing a long-sleeve shirt in 95-degree weather because he still has PTSD from the snow at Ann Arbor. I think Michigan should probably go into Columbus and win that game. 13.5 points, which actually it's 14.5 points we'll talk about here to wrap up the show, is a tad preposterous given that Michigan won by 15 just 7 months ago. Clarence Walder says he still thinks that Michigan State beats Michigan. So, I don't know, Clarence, kind of sound like a little bit of a hater to me. Maybe you're a Michigan State fan. I don't know if I believe that. I don't think Michigan State has anywhere near the talent this year that they had last year, and they've lost most of their good players, including Kenneth Walker, the third, who will probably be cut by the Seahawks coming up here in a few weeks. But let me know who you got in this one. The 2022 Michigan State game taking place October 29th, potentially a night game, Halloween weekend. Should be a ruckus crowd there in Ann Arbor no matter what time the game is. Give me a blue down in the comments. Just type blue if you think Michigan's going to win it. If you're completely drunk on Mel Tucker Kool-Aid and you think it's going to be the Spartans, go ahead and type green, but I'll probably delete that comment just so I don't let anybody see that some people out there think that Michigan State could win that game. We mentioned the odds, though, right? We mentioned the odds for the Ohio State-Michigan game and the odds for a few other ones. So roll through those. These are the sportsbook odds that have been put out in the last few days. I want to make sure you guys know about. Michigan, 27-point favorite in the opener against Colorado State, first week of the year, 57.5-point over-under in that one. Next game that we have odds for, October 1st, fifth game of the year, on the road in Kinnick, 4-point favorites against Iowa, a team they beat by 39 in December. Penn State at Michigan. Possible night game. Michigan right now favored by 6.5. Michigan won that game on the road 21-17 last year. Michigan State, Wolverines favored by 8.5 points in the early line. Michigan State won that game 37-33 at home last year in a game that Michigan was up by 16 in the second half. Nebraska comes to the Big House this year, November 12th. Wolverines favored by 11.5. Michigan squeaked one out. Remember that fumble that Brad Hawkins picked up that fumble, and then the late touchdown that Michigan scored to win 32-29 in a night game on the road in Nebraska last year. And then the final game, regular season for Ohio State. The Michigan's got one more game in the regular season after this. Michigan at Ohio State. The Buckeyes 14.5-point favorites. Look, if I hadn't lost all my money in Dogecoin, I'd be putting $200,000 or $300,000 on Michigan this one because that seems like an absurd line. 14.5 points. That's a 29.5-point swing, and they lost 2 first-round wide receivers. I'm not sure if home field advantage is that much of a advantage, but we'll see on November 26th in Columbus. Right, the Ohio State fans will tell you, look. Someone who was born the day that Ohio State lost to Michigan at home last is now going to be able to buy beer at the stadium this year. I don't listen to any of that crap. This is a new era, and I think Michigan's going to take it in Columbus this year. Last question, coming in from Ohio State fan. I thought this one was just funny. I don't even really know the context of it, but what's that smell? Oh, it's Michigan. It's Michigan Pirates, a Michigan podcast. I don't know if he's talking about us or the podcast, the YouTube channel, actually, that calls themselves Michigan Podcast. But I saw a few replies of people saying, oh, I like Michigan Podcast. So I think they took it as the guy who does the show called Michigan Podcast. Like, I'm not getting into YouTube beefs. I have no beefs with any of them other Michigan YouTube people, except for Sloppy Sam, the guy who did everything he could to try and get Jim Harbaugh fired 3 years ago, and who was a champion to canceling the Big Ten football season in 2020 on his tiny little radio show that gets about a fifth of the audience that we do. But nevertheless, hey, they're the Ann Arbor sports radio station. So I don't really like much that Sam does, but other these other guys, Michigan Podcast, Mark Rogers, et cetera, they can do their thing. We all know who gets the biggest audience, at least here on YouTube. So a ton of you guys were the end of Video Squad a couple weeks ago typing squad, so really appreciate you. So another squad ask. If you haven't followed me on Twitter yet, it's at James Yoder. I'm going to follow back the first 10 people who follow me after we put the show out here on Wednesday afternoon. So links down in the comments description, but it's pretty simple. It's just at James Yoder on Twitter. Really appreciate everyone who's watched to the end of the show. We will be back with another video, probably Thursday, maybe Friday. Until then, go Blue.